And they're constantly trying to make everything a partisan point. You know, that's another thing. You know, it's funny because I know you just did the Convo Couch, and I've been doing their show now for, I think a little over a year is when me and Pasta first connected. And, you know, I've been able to especially reach him and Fiorella, and obviously I've done stuff with Slow News Day. But every time he brings me up to people in his circle, what do they associate me with? QAnon. And that drives me mad because, like, you know, Ryan, like from the very inception, I said, this is going to be bad news. This is going to be used to debunk people like me, like you said, that talk about instead of, you know, every pedophile in Hollywood and Tom Hanks and all this stuff. No, let's talk about Dennis Hazard. No, let's talk about Mark Foley. No, let's talk about Bryan Singer and his network. Let's talk about Kevin Spacey. Let's talk about all these people, right?
Lady California. I mean, you can go on and on. I mean, there's countless politicians that it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, Ed Murray is another one out of Seattle. I mean, Anthony Weiner out of New York. But we could continue.
On and on. Yeah.
On and on. Mark Foley, who was protected by Hazard out of Florida, that was actually doing legislation nationally for child's victims' rights while sexting a 15-year-old page. And believe me, guys, that's what he got caught doing. Any of these crimes you're hearing about, any of them, and especially when they have to do with children and powerful people, you can't imagine how many other disturbing crimes they've committed. And this is why it has been such a passionate issue of mine since I've been covering this stuff. And it's heartbreaking to see it co-opted to the point where someone goes, yeah, adrenochrome, bro. You know, like, and I'm like, oh my God, like, this is like the madness, right? And you don't know if these are trolls. I'm doing a live stream last night, and someone puts in, you know, I take, it was an Ask Me Anything. Who knows? Maybe it'll be my last Ask Me Anything on YouTube if they take me down. And it goes, the Trump administration got rid of human trafficking by 96%. And I go, what are you talking about?
Where did that number even come from? Not true.
Like, first of all, it's an impossible number to measure, right?
Right.
But to see that and to see, like, that's the type of shit posting that some of these people that think they're informed rely upon, right? I get that all the time. Oh, bro, I heard this and that. Show me some evidence of it, man. I'm putting the mainstream articles, the PDF files on. Like, I'm starting to read Jonas Salk and his son Jonathan Salk talking about the future of humanity. And actually, his son revamped that book into this presentation for Google workers. I was watching it last night. So in 2019, yeah, he gave a whole thing on population control and the curve and his dad's institution. And I only went into that line because I'm watching other people, and I was watching Jay Dyer talk about that because of the SPARS document. Yeah. And, you know, I think that's an important point, is the people that are trying to get this information out legitimately will take something that another researcher is talking about, go then to that research and then expand upon it instead of just pointing to, like, you know, a video that goes, look at Highway 66 in the picture here. We know he's raping children.
Right, exactly. and that's the point, is it's always about setting it in a way. My best example is like the turning the frogs gay Alex Jones scenario, right? And they always try to absurdly, like, ignorantly reduce it down and simplify it down to something that can be dismissed. But that example is always good because, remember, that is based on a real story. There was a real story about industrial runoff that was changing the hormonal makeup of the animals, and of course the frogs being one of those. And of course it turns into turning frogs gay, and that becomes a story that's laughed at and ridiculed and it's dismissed. But whatever happened to the industrial runoff that was hurting? Who cares about that? Because Alex Jones said gay frogs, right? That's how this works. This is a coordinated effort, right? And it's the same thing to what you were just saying. I mean, they will go out of their way to create a sub-narrative based on the truth, but simplified, so then they can then point to our researched, documented, objective research, work, and go, oh, that's gay frogs, so we can dismiss it. That's
you know what? 1,000%. And man, I wish I had it here because it's so badass. I may actually just have you start talking for a second and go grab it. But I just got it today from Amazon. And basically, with the Bohemian Club, I talk a lot about a guy named George Tisdale Bromley, because he's this well-traveled guy born in the 1800s, and he's the one that brought the occult rituals, the cremation of care specifically, into the group. And I literally just got this first. I didn't know, it didn't have a picture of it, but I'd seen the same book go for it was like $124 for the same model, right?
Wow.
I thought I was going to get a newer one. This guy I got it for like $12 on Amazon. And in it, as I opened it, and there, by the way, he's got chapters on the Bohemian Club, and after he comes over, and it's actually dedicated to the Bohemian Club. And when I go grab it, the cover is a boat. He traveled by sea, shaped like an owl. So when I open this book, man, I kid you not, it's got newspaper clippings. Whoever owned this.
Cool. I love that when you get an old book and it's got like notes and stuff inside the paper. That's cool.
Dude, of the Bohemian Club from the early 1900s. So when I historically am talking about this stuff and then relating it to actual, not only parapolitics, but the military-industrial complex, especially in the sense of Oppenheimer, the nuclear project, the A-bomb, people like Reagan, being there, Nixon being there, obviously Eisenhower being there for years, Bush Senior being a staple there. That's real. That's real. Now, if you want to go read the Franklin scandal, or the Franklin cover-up, either are great, and see how dark it possibly gets to the Bohemian Grove, yep. I want you to do that. But I also want to stay in some historical relevance. So while I go get that book, talk about how important that is, staying within the bounds of things not only that you can prove, but are so fantastical, you wouldn't believe them otherwise.
Right, yeah. No, that's a great point. I mean, one of the best examples is something like Nixon in that regard, right? Nixon, on the record, when asked directly about the Bohemian Grove, said, "Oh, I forget the exact quote, something like, oh, that's a bunch of homos and weird and weird stuff." And it was very specific. And the point is, that's not a secret. That's not something that you can dismiss. That's on the record, and that's about something. He's commenting about something that at the time they were acknowledging as not real. Like, so this is the kind of thing that we need to look back and we can see throughout history that just like we see today, that there are the very same people that are adamantly telling you that these things are fake news tend to be the ones that know as a matter of fact that they're not. Right. Yeah. And that's I'm even here at the point they made was about Nixon, where he on the record said that. Right. Yeah. And that was at a time when that was supposed to not even be real. Mm-hmm. But now we go forward and we know, there's a lot of very weird. I mean, Reagan is a good example because Reagan ties to the Franklin scandal and Reagan ties to a lot of weird stuff, including the creation of the continuity of government, shadow government scenario, which I think brings us to today. So there's connections to all of this, which all that ties back to the Epstein network scenario that ties back to Mossad and ties back to the CIA. And all those are being used to drive policy in a direction that leads us to today. These things aren't they're interconnected. And I believe that. Right? Absolutely.
And when you were talking about Nixon, one of the big names that I forgot about that was extremely prevalent and may still be. I mean, who knows if they're going to have, it's a good question because we'll see what happens with the Bilderberg meeting this year. I don't know that it's going to happen. And then the Bohemian Club. And isn't it before I get to this book, isn't it convenient, like I was going to say Kissinger, that these guys are not meeting in large groups anymore now that they are oppressing global populaces. And I don't think that's not on purpose. I think that the threats would be more and real, and I'm not calling for anything like that, but it puts it so a lot of these Predator class members and their minions are decentralized. They're certainly not in the same area ever. And to go back to this, everybody can actually go see this. You can find the Long Ago and the Later On by George Tisdale Bromley in PDF format. And I mean, this bad boy is old, but when I opened it, like I said, this is where I was really happy. Bohemians honor best loved man. That's got to be from like literally this was published in 1904. So I would imagine that's probably right around the time. And that's Bromley right there. He's got plenty of those little Masonic pose pictures as well. I would encourage people to check it out because he also met resistance from members, because you got to remember this was largely a social club before all the political influence came in. And, that's where some of these things originated, of just like encampments and parties. But he wanted to bring a little bit more. That's all I'm saying. So, and again, that's worth noting because it's a part of our global history. It's not fiction, dude. Well, like, let's not just wrap ourselves in the flag and put our hands on our hearts and say, this is a Christian nation, buddy. If you don't like it, you can just get out. I think it's important that people know what the true roots of the power players in this nation and their beliefs are. That's really important.
Couldn't agree more. And to that larger point, there's so many other things other than Bohemian Club or any of these discussions. I frankly think the Bilderberg Group, because it's been so identified, is not, I think whatever the new group is, we don't know about it, or it's something else. And that's just another figurehead grouping like I doubt any of these things are what they once were, because everybody knows what they are to a larger degree. Not everybody, but a large grouping of people see what they are. But there's so many other events like that. There's so many other things throughout history that we know are true, but because of the story around them has been, sprinkled with fake information. So we look at the bigger picture and go, the whole thing is fake. It creates a scenario where you don't believe the reality. I mean, I pointed this out in a recent interview. If they wanted us to understand the real history of this country, they would have taught us about the Federal Reserve. They would have taught us about the major families that played very clear roles, like the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds. Well, Carnegie's play, they come. My junior high was Carnegie, right? But the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, their names appear on these different locations or different institutions. But when you dive into the history, they're nowhere to be seen, even though they were guiding the reins of damn near everything that happened. Or when you see these breakdowns of the Forbes 100, wealthy people, weird, they're not on the list. Why wouldn't they include them, even though they're most prominent of all families? It's because they know they're not supposed to. How else do you just describe that? It's just, so the point is they're obviously constantly cultivating information. Constantly.
Hey everybody, Jason Burmis here. And just to remind you, you can watch the almost 90-minute full interview with Ryan from The Last American Vagabond exclusively at Rockfin. So go make that free account right now. Thank you guys. Love you. And see you on the flip side over at Rockfin.